Hey guys, today I'm going to be doing my April reading wrap up, showing y'all all the books that I have completed in the month of April. I finished my TBR this month, but let's get into it. The rating of the book on the bottom of the screen, because sometimes I don't remember numbers. They're not my specialty. But we're going to start with the book I finished most recently and go all the way to the book that I finished first this month. In April, I did focus on reading classics, but y'all know I do mood read as well. I have an ebook as well going on. And the first book that I'm going to talk about is the ebook that I finished, but I do have a physical copy because just with some of these bigger books, the majority of this series I have in mass market paperback. It was a gift. Those are easier for me to read on Kindle versus reading the physical mass market paperback, but I know this paperback isn't mass market. But I'm here to tell you about Go Tell the Bees that I'm going by Diana Gabaldon. I'm not going to tell y'all a lot because this is the 9th book in the series, and I have now finished every Outlander book that is published, except for the side books, but for the main series, I have finished all the ones that are out, and that's just like, oh my gosh, it feels so good. I think it took me around 5 years to finish the series, maybe a little less. It took some time. But so far, like, this point in the series, the writing is very episodic, and I would have liked some plot lines just to round off better, like little tiny plot lines, because it'd just be like, we went through that, never hear about it again, and I'm like, okay, what was the point in all that? Just to show the brutality at the time, I guess. I just wish there would have been more well-rounded writing, I guess. Another thing, again, 9 books in the series, some of those plot lines are going to get repetitive. I'm not going to say too much about that because it could get into spoilers, but funny thing is, some of my least favorite characters have now been the characters with my favorite storyline. It's just so funny how that can happen, but when a book series is, 9 books at the moment, that can happen. But one of the things I didn't touch on in my review, but I do think is a theme in this book that I never really thought about before until this weekend when I was finishing it up, is that what we see as history, what we know as history, isn't 100% the truth. That just kind of blew my mind. Everything we think we know, it's only, I know you only hear like the victors write history or whatever, the winners write history. But still, even that, they could get some things wrong. Something could be recorded a few days later or just misreported and all that, because I mean, obviously back in the 1700s they didn't have all the like fact checking that we have nowadays. And that just kind of blew my mind, being like, wow, everything we think we know is not everything we really know. It's just crazy to think about. But this isn't my favorite book in the series, but I still think it was a pretty good book. I do like to add a graphic novel into my reading each month, and this month it was Dog Days by Reqium. This is kind of, it says auto-fiction. I think it's fiction based on a true story, maybe, because the character names in the book are different than what the actual names are, but the dogs are the same dogs that they are in real life. I'm still confused by that term. I had never seen that before, and I never Googled it, but on Goodreads and Storygraph and everything, it said it was nonfiction. But this is about this couple, man in the couple, he goes through some stuff. He loses the woman who raised him, so he's very depressed, and they're like, what about we get a dog, and that would just be, a source of joy. They adopt Carrot, who is a little Welsh corgi, so cute. They adopt him, and he's just having a bit of a hard time living in the city in Seoul, so they move to Gangwon Island, which is a more like rural island outside of Seoul, but still pretty close by. When they get there, it's a bit of a culture shock. Because in Seoul, in the big city, dogs are treated like kids, basically. Like, they dress them up, they cuddle them, they go in strollers, and then in the country, there's dogs who are tied up to trees, there are dogs just locked in cages all day, and there's even a dog vendor that goes around collecting mutts, and people eat dogs or turn dogs into alcohol. That was just such a rude awakening for our characters. I don't know if rude awakening is the right word, but it's just such a shock when they get there and are seeing how different life is, even though it's so close to Seoul. And that's something that is so interesting about, you can be so close, places can be so close together but so different from their cultures, and that it really brings up the question, things that certain cultures do that you don't agree with. And it's now in 2024, it did become illegal to, you know, use dogs for food in South Korea. There's still a lot of issues like with the dogs being in cages, dogs being neglected and that kind of thing. But the author wanted to showcase this bit of cruelty that is happening or was happening in South Korea. But I mean, since then it has obviously been outlawed, which is great. But she wanted to bring awareness to that, to what was going on. But she was also really scared that people would be generalizing, thinking all Asian communities do that, when no, in South Korea that was not the case. It's only in these like really rural, isolated areas rather than, and it was usually like older people doing this, because now I just think younger people have the internet, they have social media, they have smartphones where they are, you know, being influenced all over. So that had really, you know, gone out the door for the masses. Also, I love that the author was like, we shouldn't be full of hatred, we shouldn't show anger and all to these people, show disgust to these people because of their culture and the beliefs that they were raised on. They were raised in different times than we are now. That's not going to change anything, and it's probably going to make things worse if you treat people like that. So you can still try to change their beliefs and everything, but don't do it in such a violent and rude way. As I told you, I read classics this month, and I went by the highest rated classics on my TBR according to Goodreads, and one of those was Stoner by John Williams. It did not live up to the hype that was on social media for it. The character work, there's so much potential with this book. That's the thing. This book is filled with potential. I felt like this was supposed to be a character story, but it wasn't for me. I did not connect to the character. I did not care about him whatsoever. The atmosphere, it's on a college campus, the University of Missouri in Columbia, and yeah, if you like dark academia but want something more real, I think this would be the way to go, because it's not sort of like college romance or anything like that. But if you like academia, I do think you'll like this setting. And the writing was good. Now, there were like, with the time jumps, I had difficulty, you know, clarifying that, oh, okay, we've jumped this far into the future. It would just happen randomly, like one paragraph to the next, and I was like, wait, what? We're like 12 years in the future from the last paragraph? Oh, that was a bit much for me. But I do think the writing overall was pretty good writing, because I was really scared that it wasn't going to be accessible. Like, this cover and all just looks really scary to me, that it's just going to be something very academic and something hard to understand. But no, the writing was very accessible for me to read. And as for the plot, we are following this man from the time he is a young adult to the time he is an elder. Again, that seems like it should be a character-driven story, and it probably is, but I did not find that connection. I've yet to go read like Reddit threads and everything on this book. I really need to do that just to see what I'm missing, why I missed it. I did do this on my Kindle. I read it as an ebook. But some of the themes here are like classism, privilege, because he is coming from, our main character, Stoner. He's coming from an agricultural family in Missouri. His parents were farmers, and they didn't have the privilege to go to university. And he does get that chance. He doesn't want to live the life of his forebears. But also, he realizes, even though he has an education, that doesn't put him on the top of society. It doesn't even really, you know, make him high middle class or anything. And there was just a lot of that internal fight in his head of privilege, class, elitism. There were a lot of good themes here. Let's go to one of my mood reads, and that is The Trees by Percival Everett, my first book of his. I did do the audiobook for this, and we'll get more into that in a little bit. But the characters, there were so many law enforcement characters that was convoluting for me, because I couldn't tell them apart. Like, that's the thing with this book. I cannot tell characters apart, but I do think they are extremely realistic. This book is taking place in Money, Mississippi, and our author, he's from Columbia, South Carolina, which is just down the road from me. And you can definitely tell, like, these characters are exactly how people would react to this kind of situation, and it's so spot on. That kind of leans into the atmosphere as well. I wouldn't say this is a straight up atmospheric book, no, but he just paints this picture of the South and its people so well. Let's get into the writing. This is really quick, witty, smart writing. And I think if I didn't do the audiobook, I would have been confused, because the dialogue was just so fast and everything that I would just be like, oh my gosh, what's happening? If I was reading it physically, I'd probably get lost. But also in the audiobook, I had to listen to the audiobook at a slower pace than I usually do, because again, it was so fast, and I wanted to be able you know, to understand what I was listening to and to just lock it all in my head. Now, the plot itself is so interesting and just so intriguing. This is a story of vengeance, and it is a critique of white supremacy in the United States and the history of lynchings in the United States. You would think that'd be in a literary or historical fiction novel, but this is taking it, making it kind of a thriller. It's very genre bending, this book. And it's just done in such a unique way. I would not expect this at all. And talking about things I didn't expect, there would just be scenes where, yes, it makes so much sense, but I would be like, we're going there. We're really going there. And this is really happening. It was so crazy. It falls back on the writing as well, but there would just be some like dialogue, some quotes where I'd be like, jaw on the floor. Like, yes, if you're doing an audiobook and if you're in public or anything, have your headphones in, because this like there's obviously a lot of slurs and everything. As I told you, this is about a critique of white supremacy, and then just some vulgar stuff that had my jaw on the floor because I was not expecting it at all, and I was just like, oh, it's so disgusting, but oh my gosh. It was just, yeah, there was a lot. I can't wait to tell people about what it said because I was so shocked by this one quote. As I said, it's such a unique and such a powerful read. If you really take in this cover, and there's this one chapter in here, again, my jaw was on the floor because I was like, oh my gosh. I was so speechless. I think it was chapter 63, and that really relates to the cover of the book, that I was just stunned. And I think this is a totally powerful and impactful read. I do like to add a nonfiction book to my TBR every month, and this month it's Chesapeake Reqium, A Year with the Waterman of Vanishing Tangier Island by Earl Swift. And this has been my favorite nonfiction book that I've read this year. It wasn't a 5-star, but I did find this very enjoyable. Again, I did the audiobook for this one. I thought this was going to be a story of an isolated community and can you be isolated in the modern day? And yes, we do touch on themes of that, but this is really a story of climate change and erosion and just who is more important to save in climate catastrophe. Tangier Island will likely be the first place in the United States that is going to be impacted by the rising sea levels, and these residents will probably be the first climate refugees in the United States. Yet nothing is really being done, or it's being put on the back burner by people in Washington and in the government. When cities like Miami, New York, Norfolk, Jacksonville, those bigger cities are having, more emphasis put on them, more being done to help when the sea levels really start impacting the east coast of the United States. But nothing is being done for this rural, isolated community in the Chesapeake Bay. The theme here is who is more important to save, and it was just so incredibly fascinating seeing this community. If you're somebody who likes small town romance and you like that small town aspect, I think you're really gonna like this, because you are seeing that small town and it's really building up that community, and you can really just, all these different people, characters, I know they're real people, but it's all building around them, building around their businesses and everything, and you just get so immersed onto Tangier Island and connected with these people. And it was such an impactful read, also to read about somewhere so isolated and so different than anywhere I've ever been before, and kind of like Dog Days. This is somewhere so close to where I am and where my family comes from, but seems light years away, just how different these people live than the rest of us in the United States. Now we have the Iliad by Homer, probably the oldest work of Western literature that we know of. And yeah, this is kind of a me problem, because this isn't really the kind of book that I'm drawn to, but since it is such a cornerstone in Western literature, I wanted to read it because obviously it's so influential. All these like Greek mythology retellings we have, there are so many ones that are based on the Trojan War as well, which this is with Achilles. I didn't realize the gods were going to play such a big role in this, because I've seen movies like Troy and I don't really remember the gods that much, but they were really, there's a lot of questions of free will and if humans have it. That's something that I've talked about before with my like Christian upbringing, is destiny, free will, what is it, what exists. A really fun conversation. Now we're getting it in like a mythology standpoint of, do we really have control of our actions, or is it just the gods, the universe, playing games with us? I know, not necessarily playing games, but putting us where we need to be, making us do what we need to do. It's really interesting to think about but I didn't realize they would have such a prevalent role in this. So I'm glad that I've been reading the National Geographic book that I have on Greek gods and goddesses, because that was really a great foundation to have going into the Iliad. So yes, I would recommend having just some background knowledge on the gods. Now there is a list at the start that does show you like a list of all the gods and everything and what they control. So if you ever do get confused, you can just flip back to the start of the book to see that. And that was really helpful with all the Spartans and Greeks and all those kinds of people, because I would be like, okay, who's on what side? Because there's a lot of inner turmoil in the different camps and everything that I was having to go back and look, because I would just get really overwhelmed with that. But this is mainly one big war story, a lot of battles. I would have liked if there was more politicking, because war movies might be my most watched movie, but battle scenes just, I don't care. I don't care for battle scenes, and this is about the Trojan War, so I should have known that it was going to be a lot of that, but those scenes personally just aren't for me. Now we have another mood read, and that is Why You Sleep by Stephanie Merritt. This is a horror book, and the characters, they're gonna ultimately be pretty forgettable. I did like some of the side characters, but our main character, if you do like unreliable narrators, this might be a book for you to check out. But she's in her 40s, maybe 50s, she's in her midlife and having beef with a 16-year-old girl. Like, what? I don't want to read that. That's so freaking annoying. Sorry for getting kind of triggered there. But the atmosphere in this is so good. It really reminds me of Charlotte McConaughey. Throw in some Outlander, throw in some Ruth Ware, and They Drown Our Girls or something. They Drown Our Daughters, that book. That is the atmosphere. It's all really good. Like, the nature is so good. Just the vibes so much remind me of Migrations by Charlotte McConaughey. This is taking place on an island off the coast of Scotland. We have a lot of island books this month. That was not intentional. The writing, oh my gosh, so long. The writing ruined this book for me, because we would have some paragraphs that went on for 2.5 pages. Why? For no artistic purposes, you should have a paragraph going on that long. That's like when I see a Reddit post where they haven't, spaced things out. I'm like, yeah, I'm not reading that. So I would skim through those paragraphs, because no, just nowhere on earth, no artistic purpose does a paragraph need to be that long. Please break it up, because my eyes just following that are going to get really overwhelmed. It's going to be too much for me. I don't like it. But the plot for this was so, I don't really read a lot of ghost stories, but back when I was in my early teens, I loved paranormal stories. I found them so fascinating, and this was just giving me so much inspiration for my own stories, especially taking place somewhere as ancient as Scotland. Just a ghost story in Scotland with all the history there. So good. Lastly, my book club pick of the month was East of Eden by John Steinbeck. Let's talk about the characters first. He knows how to write a villain. I always complain when I read fantasy books that there's a villain there for the sake of having a villain, and the author really doesn't develop that. But John Steinbeck really dives into what makes a villain, and if somebody is born that way, what makes a monster. That's one of the big themes here. Is it something, as I said, you're born with? Is it something you inherit? Is it just something you pick up along the way with how you're raised? Just certain events have to happen to you to make you who you are as a person. That is a huge theme, not just with the monsters, but what makes us who we are. And I totally did not expect that. And there were even the monster vibes were just so prevalent. I even got vampire vibes at times. And some of my fellow book club readers, they picked up on that as well, and can definitely see where I was getting that from. I think that was just really to depict a monster. But I loved that all these characters are so human and so real. And the atmosphere, he really uses colors, and I'm somebody who's a very visual person, a visual learner, and I think if you're like that, then this book, you'll really get on with this book. Now, the writing, I do think there were some pacing issues. As you can see, it is a tome. It is quite the thick book that, yeah, I had trouble with the pacing. It was like a roller coaster, up, down, where I just really struggled with that. I do think I would have liked it more if I did the audiobook, because at times it can get dense. This was kind of hard for me to get into when I first started reading, because I was like, okay, this is a lot of information that we're taking in at once. It's very descriptive. So I do think the audiobook might be the route to go, just for me personally, but I would, again, follow in tandem if I did the audiobook. And then the plot, yeah, it's a big multi-generational family saga that's my all-time favorite trope, and I was, you know, really drawn to that. And just seeing this part of California and seeing this part of American history, it's really a part that you don't really learn about too much, because I mean, it's like, what was happening between the Civil War and the World Wars? Nobody really talks about that. So when I do see these new settings, it all is really intriguing. And just to see how much changed in the last century, like when they were talking about the 1800s of how they started versus how they ended, I was like, oh my gosh, so much happened. I mean, we can even think of the century, the 1900s that I was born in. We didn't have air travel at the start. Cars were really just getting started, but we ended it with the internet and man in space. It's like, oh, it's mind-blowing how much can happen in 100 years, and then in the grand scheme of things, 100 years isn't all that much. Wow. Those are all of the books that I completed in the month of April. Let me know, have you read any of these books? And from my reviews, do you have any books that you suggest to me? Because, you know, always have open ears to recommendations. But I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you made it all the way through, leave any kind of water emoji in the comments below. And as always, comment, rate, and subscribe. And don't forget to ring that notification bell to be notified when all my videos go live. I'll see you in my next one. Bye! If you are familiar with my videos, you're used to seeing Sherman at the end of them. Sadly, Sherman has since passed away, but I would still like to encourage you guys to help your local shelters. Sherman was at the Darlington County Humane Society in rural South Carolina. I always have their link down below in the description if you guys would like to help them, but also help your local shelters as well. You can do that by donating, sharing posts like this one, volunteering, fostering, and adopting, which it's great to do all of those things. Great to help your community, great to help the animals in your community, and I cannot recommend it enough. All of my pets were rescues, they were strays or from animal shelters, and I love them so much, and I know how much love they can give, so knowing these pets at the shelter can equally give that much love, it's amazing. And y'all should totally take part and help out those local animal shelter pets, and please help them.